Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the first show of RVAsec 2023. Richmond, Virginia. My next guest. What's your name, sir?
Richard Hummel.
And what's the name of your company?
We are from Netscoutat, visibility company.
And today we're going to talk about some threats and your assert threat research.
Yes.
It's kind of cool about denial of service attacks, right?
Distributed denial of service. A little bit different, right?
A little different, that's right. And I'm going to have you know, just as a little side note, back in the 90s, I filed a case in Boston about a guy at an IP that was sending out a denial of service attack. Only 350,000 emails, but it shut down the Fox and Warner Brother email servers.
Of course, yeah.
And they criminally prosecuted him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this goes back a long ways, and now it's not 350,000, it's billions, right?
It's insane. So, if we could go all the way back. So, we're actually, this year alone, 1973 was the first distributed denial of service attack.
No kidding.
50 years
wow.
This year.
Do you know how many hits they went on? Probably not a lot like today.
So back then, we're talking maybe a couple hundred.
Yeah, a couple hundred.
If that, maybe dozens.
Yeah.
If you can always actually go back to first quarter of 2013, we're talking about 292,000 attacks.
Jesus.
First quarter of 2022, 2.9 million attacks, right? That's the scale. It's changing at a crazy rate.
So what's the shift since 2022? Up or down? More tax, less tax?
So there's nuances here. So I would say that we're relatively flat right now over the past 2 years as far as attacks go. But when we talk about what the change has happened, there's a lot of security efforts happening in the community right now where organizations, ISPs, they're implementing best current practices, okay? And that's shutting down some portions of attacks, like volumetric attacks, the typical reflection amplification, the things that hit 3.4 terabits per second, right? Which is an absurd number. Most people are like, what's a terabit, right? That's changing because at scale, we're talking about implementing this security practice. So what are adversaries doing? They're actually implementing other attack measures like direct path. So the IP address attacking you is actually the IP address for the device in question. It's not spoofed anymore.
Oh.
And so now we're talking about lower volume attacks,
right,
but higher speed, and more attacks that look like a normal connection into your environment. And so adversaries are able to get around first layers of security. They're able to mimic what looks like a legitimate connection, causing lots of mayhem. And that's not only just flat, that's actually increasing as we're seeing in the second half of 2022.
Oh, so fewer attacks, bigger impact. Is that the impact for 2022?
Absolutely a bigger impact. And because we're seeing this kind of TCP type connections, which is what you would typically expect, whether you're connecting to a website, you're browsing Facebook, whatever it might be, right? It's not like the typical UDP stuff that's either spoofed or easily mitigated, okay? We're talking about multi-vector stuff, targeting applications, targeting websites. In fact, websites alone, in the past 4 years, we've seen a 500% increase in attacks against HTTP and HTTPS.
500%?
500%.
Oh,
so,
God.
it's a massive change that we're seeing across the landscape, and that really is it.
I was doing a show at Black Hat a year or two ago, and ransomware up, not 400%, 4,000. I said, no, I heard that wrong, and they said, no, 4,000. Are we doomed? Tell me how we're going to fix that. I know you guys have a solution.
So here's the deal. There's a lot of parallels between ransomware and DDoS. One, they both deny service. They're both designed to take something down. However, with DDoS, there is hope. There's a recovery period. DDoS attacks don't last forever. It's not like if you're encrypting files and now you have to pay or you have to get the encryption keys. Right? With DDoS, you can recover. You can emergency on board. You can put protections in place. And here's where the difference lies. If you are prepared for DDoS attacks, if you have a solution in place, on-prem solution, in the cloud solution, whatever it might be, you can prevent the vast majority of DDoS attacks. And so, yeah, obviously I'm biased to our products,
sure,
right? Whether you're enterprise or your service provider, whether you're using our cloud solutions. But the reality is any form of protection is going to get you 80% of the way. So understanding that you're going to get targeted. Maybe you've rebooted your router. Maybe you have had slow latency. Maybe your YouTube connection takes a little bit longer. There's a good chance that's DDoS attacks.
Right.
It might not be directly at you, but it could be somebody adjacent to you. It could be your service providers being hit. And now all of those connections are saturated, which means that traffic has to go somewhere. And so everybody at some point who uses the internet, which arguably is probably most of the world, has probably had DDoS attacks. So making sure you're aware that they're out there, that they're going to come after you at some point, and just have some preparations in place is the key.
You said something interesting at the beginning. I'm paraphrasing this. It had something to do about how happy you were that companies were now implementing these security measures. And I'm going, it's 2023. What? I had my first computer in 1994, and I had a thing called PC Tools, and we tried back then to do something. Are security postures shifting? I thought they would have shifted already. Shift left kind of stuff, all like for programming and things. What's going on with that?
I mean, there's any number of reasons for this. Let me give you a good example. IoT. How long have we had IoT devices? How long have these IoT devices had default usernames and passwords, right?
Yeah.
Admin. You're going to log into these things. Adversaries know this. Mirai, Satori, these IoT botnets, they have thousands and thousands of password combinations that they're going to try to brute force. In fact,
the defaults yeah,
exactly.
And they ship them like that. Thanks, manufacturers. That's great.
So why do we still have this? Well, there's a couple of reasons, right? Manufacturers want to get their product out as fast as possible. They want it as affordable as possible, and they're only beholden to regulations that say use the best efforts to secure these things. What is best effort? It's subjective, right? Does it mean you have to have every time you log into a new IO device, you immediately set a new password? No. It means that maybe they've randomized the password and they put it on a label on the side of the machine, right? And so now an adversary, all they have to do is go out and figure out all these different devices and what that password combination looks like. Now they have a blueprint for trying to crack that.
Right.
And so that's one aspect of it. It's like there's a lot vying against having good security practices. And the same is true for all of these other spaces. Like what's happening right now, the best current practice that's actually shutting down volumetric is something called source address validation. All of the big, huge attacks, the terabit second attacks, the 3.4 terabit second attacks a couple years ago, those are all UDP reflection amplification, spoofed source IP addresses. So if you can do source address validation and shut down spoofing, you effectively prevent these kinds of attacks. Right. Very, very easy to do. Another example, DNS water torture. You send a bunch of random subdomains to a bunch of DNS servers. They don't exist, so the server generates NX domain requests, non-existent subdomain. That has been a vector, a sophisticated vector, since 1997. 26 years now, and it's growing faster than ever before and more effective than ever before. Why? Because we're not following some of these best current practices. So as a community, when we come together, like what happened with source address validation, it has a major impact. Volumetric attacks right now are down 18% year over year.
Wow, that's good.
Because of that, because we're not spoofing traffic on certain network segments anymore. And so we really need to come together as a community, as a group, service providers, enterprises together, work collectively to solve this problem. Netscout's not going to solve the entire world's problems.
Right.
Like we have a solution for this, we have products, but it's going to require a group effort to solve this issue.
Excellent, my friend. Good to have you on the show. Give us your name and website one more time.
Richard Hummel from Netscout. Thank you, everyone.
Netscout.com?
Netscout.com.
All right, excellent. Back in a minute here at RVAsec 2023, Richmond, Virginia.